Hey guys, good evening. Welcome. Good to see you guys. I think there's more folks on the way. I'm super excited that this is our final marriage mentoring event of the year, and we have the opportunity to be invested into again this evening. And let me introduce Jenny, and then I will pray, and then we will. I'll hand the mic off to Jenny so she could take most of the times to invest into us this evening. So. Jenny is a compassionate and highly skilled therapist serving as the clinical director of Lifeology Frisco, which is connected with the Watershed Initiative, which we are very familiar with. Her expertise lies in helping clients reconnect with themselves and others after experiencing trauma, using somatic and nervous system awarenesses, internal family systems, and trauma-informed approaches. Jenny's warm and approachable style resonates particularly with teens and parents facing the challenges of depression and anxiety, helping them rebuild trust and navigate difficult family dynamics. Over 24 years of marriage, 4 kids, Jenny understands firsthand the daily struggles and triumphs of parenting. She's also a trusted resource for immigrant Chinese parents, guiding them through generational and cultural divides that can emerge from within Asian American families. In addition to her work with individual clients, Jenny speaks regularly at local Asian American churches for both youth and parent groups. Outside of her work, Jenny enjoys biking, hiking around Lake Louisville, cheering on her family at their events. And so we're super excited this evening to have Jenny come and share with us this evening on the topic of in-laws and insights, bridging generations and boundaries in family dynamics. So would you pray with me before we begin this evening? Our Father, we love you. We thank you for just your presence here. Thank you for the privilege that we get to come. And God, we know that you desire that our marriages flourish, and you desire that in that we honor those who you have given to our care, whether it's our children, whether it's elderly parents. And so, God, we ask today as we are here that you would guide us, that you would teach us. And we thank you for Jenny and Stephen as they have come and spent this Friday evening with us in our church community. We pray that you would use her and speak through her. God, we also thank you for our friends from Ethnos that are here today. We're just so grateful for our sister church and, God, the ways that you are blessing them. And just, God, that you would just be present here among all of us tonight. God, we love you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you guys welcome Jenny as she comes?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Wong, and thank you so much, Pastor Sam and Laugh City Church, for inviting me. We're going to talk about caring for our parents, in-laws, and what it means to be second-generation Asian Americans caring for first-generation parents or in-laws. So I'll be very honest, I'm a professional counselor, but I'm not a professional speaker, so I'm super nervous. But I really wanted our time together today to be more about like collaborating together, so please like share and talk, and I'm gonna ask lots of questions, and I would love for you guys to join in. We're gonna discuss these important topics, grow together. Although I've been a therapist for almost 20 years, I'm not an expert daughter. I think of the Mulan song, I'm not an expert daughter or daughter-in-law, and I'm still growing and learning just like everyone else. So in our presentation today, I'm gonna talk more about kind of bigger subjects and topics, but I do want to leave room throughout the presentation for questions and discussions that you might have about like specific things, like the nitty-gritty things, like how do we plan for caring for our parents or our in-laws as they get older, questions like that. I want to leave it open for questions like that, and for us to discuss it, because when we're together, we learn together. So I can go to the second slide. So this is my family. We actually just recently went to Arkansas together. My oldest daughter, Stanley, my oldest daughter, is a freshman at the University of Arkansas. So just to introduce myself, I am a therapist, a trauma therapist, EMDR trained, ART trained, as I said, for almost 20 years. But even more than that, I am a wife to Stanley for 24 years, but also a mom to 4. You can kind of see my kids near me over there. I have a 19-year-old daughter, Michaela, 16-year-old son, Evan, 13-year-old daughter, Cameron, and then a 9-year-old daughter, Emma, and they are the cutest things. They're precious. And then you can see the rest of my family. So Stanley's mom is in the middle there. Sadly, his dad passed away earlier this year, so we're still grieving the loss of his dad, especially during this holiday season. And then my parents are right there, and then Stanley and his brother, and then my nephew Ian is there as well. And you can see that we're all pretty close. So our parents live close to us, and that's kind of our family situation. So I have experience with this. This is something that Stanley and I talk about a lot. So I have something that I want you to do with me right now. So I want you to close your eyes right now. And I'm gonna do this a lot. You're gonna be like in therapy session with me. So I want you to close your eyes with me. I want you to check in with your body. So kind of do a scan of your body from head to toe. When you think about your relationship with your parents, when you think about your relationship with your in-laws, and when you think about caring for them as they get older. So again, check in with your body, check it from head to toe, notice what you're feeling. Notice what sensations come up. And as you notice what you're feeling, what sensations you're feeling, think of one word that describes how you feel about caring for your parents or your in-laws as they get older. And then when you have that word, you can open your eyes, you can write it out on that piece of paper that you hopefully have. And if you don't, there's some in the back. One word that describes how you feel when you think about caring for your parents or your in-laws as they get older. So one of the main reasons why I'm gonna have you check in with your body a lot is because our bodies and our emotions actually give us a lot of insight. Doesn't mean they're always right, but it does give us a lot of insight into how we're really doing. So many of us, especially in the United States, we are stuck in our heads. We're always trying to figure things out, think about things, but actually our bodies and our feelings give us a lot of insight to how we're actually doing. Okay, next slide. So the main goal I hope we can get to today in the presentation is to explore together ways to build healthy relationships with our parents and in-laws, and to navigate our cultural filial piety responsibility and biblical responsibility to honor our parents. And although the presentation is geared more towards second generation, APIDA, folks like me, and their first generation immigrant parents, I think a lot of processing that we'll go through today will apply to anyone. Okay, next slide. So, you have your markers and your paper. What I would like for you to do, we're going to talk about, our understanding our stories. Like I said before, we're really doing kind of a big topics first and kind of narrowing it down. But a big part of this bridging from us to our parents or in-laws is really understanding our stories, understanding our parents' stories, understanding our stories. So right now what I want you to do is I want you to either draw or write down the word mom, draw and write down the word dad, or whoever your primary caregivers were. For some people that might be their grandparents or as you write down mom and dad. What I want you to do is, without too much thinking, Just let the words and concepts kind of flow out. I want you to, you know, write down some words or feelings around each person, about their story. Words, something about who they are and their story. So think about their childhood, what you know about their childhood. Think about what you know about their family. Think about what you think their role might have been within their own family of origin. If they were the oldest, what did that role mean? If they were the youngest, what did that role mean? If they were in the middle, middle child, what did that role mean? If they were for your mom as a girl, what did that mean? As a boy, if it was your dad, what did that mean? Was there security, wealth, or was there insecurity, war, fleeing? These are all kind of questions to think about when you think about your parents' story. So as you're writing it down, one thing that I talk to my clients a lot about, because part of my theory of counseling is called attachment theory, so I really want to know their parents' story, kind of put the puzzle pieces together of what they're working through and wanting to work through in therapy. So one of the things that I always say is that in putting the puzzle pieces together and understanding your parents' story and how it might have affected you, it's never about blame. Okay, that's like the key thing. It's never about blame. It's about understanding. I just thought about this, but maybe something else you can think about is maybe, if your parents also are Christians, what might be their faith story as well. Okay, so as we're finishing that part up, on a separate page or on the back, I want you to draw or write yourself, your name, on a separate page. Same thing. What words or feelings would you draw around yourself? Thinking about your childhood, your role in the family. What did it mean to be a boy or a girl? Was there security? Was there a lot of change? What is your story? Okay, now as you guys are finishing that, give you a few more minutes. Okay, now I want you to look at both of those pages and think about the questions on the screen. If anyone is brave enough to share, please do. What is your parents' story? How might their story affect their narratives around family, family roles, expectations of you or your siblings, respect? And then what's your story and how might it differ or coincide with your parents' narrative? So as you're looking at the 2 pages, what do you notice? Is there anything that's surprising to you? Anyone want to share? Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Both of my parents are first generation, or I guess technically second. Their parents were immigrants to the U.S. Um, Dad grew up in rural Illinois, poor farming family. They eventually did the American dream, started their own business, had some ups and downs to the 70s, came to Texas. Dad was in the Army for 30 years, Green Beret, had head injuries, and now has dementia. Mom got married while she was in college and then ended up divorcing. She married an older guy that had kids already, and then met my dad working at his dad's company. They got married, and she was actually moving back to Austin, so that was her first date was him moving her back down to Austin to finish going to UT. Um, and then basically fast forward a couple more years, and they got married and had me. So
Awesome.
there we go. And then they're both the eldest in their family. So, and then I'm also the oldest.
You're also the oldest.
Yeah.
What similarities do you see in their roles in being the oldest and you being the oldest?
Caretaker,
Okay.
which I think is pretty common, right?
Yeah.
Just have like the responsibility falls like to keep the family together. Like once they're gone, it's like it falls. I feel more on the oldest child,
Yeah.
whether it's male or female.
Yeah.
And then like as a guy, it feels like I have to provide for the entire family.
Mm.
Whether because I have a younger brother, so and just even though I don't have to, like that's still kind of a thing.
Right.
That's like
That's what you
that's
feel, yeah, as your role.
so,
Yeah.
and that's kind of similar story to my dad. Like he takes care of his siblings.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. That was great. Anyone else willing to share? And what was your name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Nice to meet you. Anyone want to share anything that was maybe surprising to you as you're kind of going through your parents' story and your own? And that's okay. I probably, if I was down there, I probably wouldn't share anything.
Sure, but you know mine.
Okay.
One kind of surprising thing is, similar to Jenny's parents' story. My parents fled when they were young from mainland China to Taiwan, so they were fleeing the communists, and so I didn't know until recently kind of what amount of insecurity and fear was involved with that, and I, in fact, didn't really even hear many stories. But one of the words I wrote down for myself was secure. Right? There's a lot of things that were lacking, like affection and other things, but secure was one of my words. And I thought that was, oh my goodness, it's interesting because for my parents, that was the last thing that they felt. Right?
But they made sure that to provide that you felt secure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even in you guys sharing that, there is a bridge. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that, finding what those similarities are. That kind of leads to my second question, just for you guys to ponder and think through. And if anyone wants to share, that'd be awesome. But, in what ways might you have taken on your parents' story as your own, even though it's not yours? So, and I will just put a caveat out there. We see this a lot in counseling, the counseling room, anxiety, right? Stanley was talking about, our parents moving from China, or not moving, like fleeing from China to Taiwan as children, and that fear. But somehow we've taken, as second generation, that anxiety that, what if everything falls apart and I need to make sure everything's okay, even though it might not necessarily be ours to own. Anyone else have anything that comes up for you? Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Sarah.
And for me, my mom grew up in an abusive household and sexually and physically abused, and both my parents were preachers' kids, and then I'm a preacher's kid. Um, but I found that even though I was never abused, this fear of men and relationships and intimacy, it wasn't until therapy as an adult, I was like, oh, secondhand trauma. I didn't experience any of that, but here I am living as if I did.
Right. That is such a great example. Thank you so much for sharing. That is kind of the work that we need to do, is being able to differentiate. Wait, I know where it comes from, but maybe it's something for me to release. So I'm going to explain some concepts in trauma therapy. Actually, one is called dialectics. So there's a type of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy, but what dialectics means is both and. So I think a lot of times we think in either or, black and white. Either like I am successful or I'm a failure, sort of thinking. But dialectics is both and. So where the both and, where even if something seems like it's contradictory or a paradox, both things can actually be true. So for example, I could think, there are some things that I really am upset at my parents for. And there are many things that I love my parents for. So the both and. And so to grow in thinking in the both and, right? Not the either or. No one is perfect. We are not either. My kids can tell you this. So, the both and. And another concept is a concept called pendulation. This is in trauma therapy. And pendulation is basically like a pendulum where we can go back and forth. So in trauma therapy, when I'm going with a client to something that was difficult in the past, I remind them that they're here with me right here and now. So the back and forth, even though we're going to the past. So that's why I do a lot of body work. Put your hands over your heart. Remember, you're here now with me. Going back and forth. But another thing is also joy and pain. Being able to pendulate between the good and the bad of my childhood. So those are some concepts to think about as we kind of move forward. Any questions about that? Any thoughts about that? Okay. Actually, let me just open it up in general. Does anyone have any questions overall? What we've gone through. Okay, next slide. Another big concept, especially in Chinese American families, I think, in a lot of families, is the idea of filial piety. So what is filial piety? At its core, it's about treating our elders with honor and respect. That's how we show love to our elders, is by treating them with honor and respect. But culturally, this quote right here might be more in line with our understanding of filial piety. So as you read this quote, there are 3 degrees of filial piety. The highest is being a credit to our parents. The second is not disgracing them. And the third is simply being able to support them. This is a quote from Confucius. Raise your hands. How many of you feel light and happy when you read this quote? No. Okay. How many of you feel burdened and heavy when you read this quote? Yeah, the majority. Okay. Anyone want to share your thoughts or insights about this concept of filial piety, maybe even within your own family as you read this. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Tony.
Hi, Tony.
So for this one, I learned a while back is like it feels highly transactional. Like they've born and raised us. They raised us in a home with food, shelter, education. Being the minimum is, of course, just doing the bare minimum is supporting them in the future. Or how can we be a benefit? You know, like oh, can we be a doctor? Can we be a lawyer? Can we at least pay them back because they went through so much or whatever?
Right. Yes, that's such a great word, transactional. And I think a lot of us are healing from that, from that feeling of like that transactional sort of relationship. Yeah, thank you so much. Anyone else have any thoughts or insights? Yes.
My name's Roy.
Hi, Roy.
And I think one thing I've noticed with my parents, especially with my dad, was it was hard to credit them because my dad was very quiet and reserved
Yeah.
until we got to know his story
Mm,
of how he came. Then, because most of the time I was disgracing him, like, you're not the father I want, that kind of stuff.
right.
The more you understand what he had to do and struggles, come to this country,
Yeah.
the more you start crediting him for why you are where you're at.
Yes.
So I think that's helped us teach our kids, how what their grandparents did for them.
Thank you for that. And we are going to talk about that later on in terms of, breaking, healing from that transactional model maybe comes from us first and not, expecting our parents to change. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So thank you. Yeah, understanding their stories. And that's exactly what I wanted to start with. What is your parents' story? I think I actually did not know this quote until I started working on this presentation. And I was like, this makes so much sense of why growing up there was so much I felt like for me that my parents' love, and I'm gonna say our relationship has changed a lot. That all of us have grown a lot, so it's very different now. My relationship with my parents than it was when I was a teenager. But growing up as a teenager, feeling like my parents' love was based on how quote unquote successful I was, and that love was not unconditional. So. So some common actually no. Let me think this. Okay, yeah. So some common expectations within second generation, families around filial piety might be the idea of respect. What does it mean to respect your elders? You can't talk back. You need to always listen to them. Do what they say. Get the grades that they say you need to get. Go to the school they say you need to go to. All those things. And support, what does it mean to support them? And then also maybe around family roles. So one of the stories that really was impactful to me was when my daughter, my now college daughter, was 1 year old. So at that time, I went to a restaurant. This was with my parents as well, and my daughter was throwing food on the floor. Which if you guys have toddlers, this is normal behavior. But my dad told me, at that time, my dad came to me and he's like, Jenny, you need to stop her from doing that. You need to teach her not to do that. And, I have this, I'm able to banter with my dad, so I was like, Dad, this is normal for a 1-year-old. Yeah, if she's still doing this when she's 3 or 4, then you can talk to me, but right now this is normal, and that's why we have this mat around her. We're gonna clean up. And then he said, well, because a parent's job is to make sure that they teach their children right from wrong. That's how you can help your child be successful, if you correct it when they're doing wrong so they know what to do right. And I think how that impacted me was I realized, oh, my dad did that. I was never praised or encouraged because he was really trying hard to be a good dad. Yeah. And I think at that point, I had a different understanding of why my dad did the things he did. It wasn't like because he wasn't proud of me or things, it was because he felt like that's what needed to happen to be a good dad. So, these narratives around family roles. What does it mean to be a good dad? What does it mean to be a good mom? Also, for those of us who are second generation, we are what's called third culture, right? We're not fully one culture, not fully the other, but somewhere in between. And which means that there's a lot of warring in us. In the American culture, it tends to be more individualistic. There tends to be more direct communication. In Asian culture, we tend to be more communal and community-oriented, family-oriented, and also indirect circular communication, which can sometimes war against each other. Another thing, elders have authority, which means grandparents ultimately have authority, but maybe in American families, the parents have the say with the kids, not the grandparents. Things like that. So thinking through common expectations. Next slide. So where Confucian culture ends and biblical parenting begins. Honoring, one of the 10 Commandments, honor your mother and father. Honoring doesn't always mean agreeing, but it does mean treating family members with dignity and love, even amidst differences. I don't know if you guys struggle with this at all, but I know I do in our marriage. Stanley will probably laugh when I say this. I didn't write this down. But sometimes I feel like when we have different opinions, that means that he's saying I'm wrong. But that's not what it means. It's just a different opinion, and that's something that I've had to learn to grow in, right? That even if we have differences in opinion, it doesn't mean that we're saying one person is right, one person is wrong. But we can treat each other with dignity and love. So, talking about honor. Ephesians 6:1-4. I'm going to read, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your mother and father, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." And then Colossians 3:20-21. "Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged." So at the root of everything is, who is our ultimate authority? Everyone knows the answer. Jesus. Jesus is always the answer. Yes, it is Jesus and God is the ultimate authority. So the ultimate authority is God, training and instruction of the Lord in Ephesians 6. So our ultimate authority is not going to a prestigious college or getting straight A's and making lots of money and making sure that we are a credit to our parents and support them. The ultimate authority is training and instruction in the Lord. Not that those things are bad, right? It's just that's not the ultimate authority. And also, what is the danger of filial piety without the authority of God? Keywords. It makes your family? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Idol. Your family becomes an idol. Yeah. Yeah. And our kids' success and how they reflect us becomes an idol. Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else? Well, the Bible says we will exasperate our children and make them bitter at us. Okay. Any questions or thoughts on that? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Anyone have an answer? What does it mean to exasperate? Let me think through. I probably have lots of.
I mean, I think in basic terms, just frustrate, like, right? The Bible scholars over there, Josh Carroll, we should say, hand it off to someone else.
Yes, we're all community. We need each other's strengths.
It's provoke, poke, exasperate. It's basically like that mess, like until overwhelming and that kind of different thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like antagonize. I just pulled up like my little letter Bible and looked at the different translations. So yeah, like he said, and also antagonize.
Yeah. Antagonizing. Can you guys think of any like concrete examples of that? No? You know what? I have an example of this. When my kids were little, I forgot which one of my kids said this to me, but she was like, "Mom, you ask too many questions." Like, and I realized that that was actually something that was exasperating, provoking to her when I would just ask her a bunch of questions when she needed maybe some space to not answer all those questions, right? And for me, I was able to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, I shouldn't ask so many questions. Another example, I have so many examples now, but these are from my own kids and my own provoking my children. But I will stop unless you guys want to hear it. Ask me afterwards. I'll share more stories. So, next slide. Okay, so bridging cultural and generational gaps. And I think you had mentioned this earlier, which is as we grow in our understanding of our stories, we can also grow in understanding areas we might be stuck in immaturity. And I should have also added not just immaturity, but also maybe unprocessed hurt or pain. So, you guys are all going to go to a counseling session again with me. And we're going to use what is called the feelings wheel. If you guys have gone to therapy before, you know what the feelings wheel is. We're going to use the feelings wheel to gain a deeper understanding of areas that we might need to grow in. So if you have your phone, hopefully you do, what I want you to do right now is I want you to look up, Google, feelings wheel, foster. I think this is from like a foster like nonprofit in Ohio, but Feelings Wheel, Foster, Action, Ohio. There's one specific Feelings Wheel that I love, and so I'm taking you guys to that one. Feelings Wheel, Foster, Action, Ohio. So I'll take you to a feelings wheel. That's the one that I use in my office. And it should have like faces in the middle, and then all these words on the outside. Okay, so that's the one I love. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to go back to the word that you wrote when I asked you in the beginning how you felt about your relationship with your parents and in-laws and caring for them. And hopefully you wrote down that word. And I want you to find that feeling in your feelings wheel. If you want to, you can start from the outer wheel, but eventually I want you to end up in the place in the middle with the faces. Find the word that fits most directly with that feeling. So anyone willing to share the word or their feeling? Just say it. Some might be like on the right-hand side, some might be on the left-hand side. There's no right or wrong. It just is.
So the word that I put, I'm Greg, by the way.
Hi, Greg. Uh huh.
and then I didn't find that word, so I went to peaceful in the wheel,
Peaceful.
put content, and I guess comfortable would be the right.
Okay, great. Peaceful. Is peaceful the one with the face?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Okay. Uh huh. Afraid, okay. And sometimes the words can be surprising, right? Like I didn't realize that I actually feel a bit afraid. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Any other? Surprised, okay.
Caught off guard. I felt
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Great. Yes.
I didn't find the exact word I put on here, but it would be on that secure trusting.
Uh-huh.
Moving forward, my parents and my wife's parents have gone through some unfortunate situations with family where they weren't really ready,
Yeah.
prepared for the passing of family members.
Mm-hmm.
And so with us, we've put a lot of planning into place for that to prevent some of that struggle that their generation went through.
Yeah. So do you think the word in the middle would be peaceful also, or do you think
I'd say it's more like trusting.
trusting? Great.
So,
Yeah.
because I mean, a plan only works as long as everything goes right.
Yeah.
So it's like trusting the plan that is like we prepared each
Mm-hmm.
other for that.
That's great. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Okay, so the next step is now I want you to look, there's a word in parentheses under the feeling word. So, for example, thinking off the top of my head from memory, I think the word under afraid is is what? Threatened. Yeah, threatened. Yeah, the word under afraid is threatened. I think the word under I know the ones on the left more than the ones on the right. Though I think the word under surprised is caught off guard. Yeah, the words under surprise is caught off guard. So now what I want you to do is I want you to think about why, those are the whys behind the feeling. You know, what is it that I feel threatened by? What is it that I feel caught off guard by? Kind of think through that. And if you want to, you can write it down. So as you're thinking about that, just a little peek into my brain. When I do the feelings wheel in session, I actually have people write down more than one feeling on the outer part of the wheel. Like when you're thinking about this, you're actually going through all the feelings that come up, and they might be all around the wheel. And then what I do is actually do percentages. So how many are under afraid? How many are under caught off guard? How many are under peaceful? Because we can feel, kind of what I talked about earlier with the dialectics. It can be both and, right? And then I kind of do a percentage. Okay, so actually most of what you're feeling is afraid. 60% of what you're feeling is afraid. Maybe 30% is surprised and 20% is trusting, And then we kind of go into the nitty gritty. And a lot of times it actually comes to a better understanding. Oh, I'm not just mad or angry. I actually feel afraid and caught off guard and all these things. So that's how the feelings wheel is helpful. Okay, anyone want to share why they're wise to what they're feeling? Anyone want to share their whys, the word in parentheses?
I can see like afraid to threaten.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then the vulnerable part
Yeah.
is gonna click through the real stuff.
As you're doing, yeah. Did anything come up for you about what you feel threatened by? If you're willing to share, you don't have to.
Oh, it's fine. I've done a lot of work
Yeah.
in this area on just feeling less than and shame.
Mm.
Susceptible to bullies when I was a little kid.
Yeah. 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 I'll come back to that. Yeah, you hit at something where it's not always about the here and now, but about something that actually happened in the past. Anyone else willing to share? Okay, then the last part of the wheel is looking at the outside, and on the outside you can see that the feeling words on the right, the words on outside parameter of that wheel is feelings when your needs are met, and then on the left, feelings when your needs are not met. So then the question is, what need do you have that is not being met if those feelings are more on the left-hand side? And then what needs are actually met? So the guy in the back, I think he said like he's prepared, right? So maybe the need is preparation and that has been met for him. So think about what needs have not been met if most of your words are on the left-hand side. What need do you have? Anyone want to share that? Or willing to?
I think for a long time I wanted to be certain.
Certain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainty meant a thing that I could be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. So the need for things to be safe and certain. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else? So as you're thinking through that, what need do I have? Then the other aspect, this has more to do with, unprocessed pain, hurt, and maybe stuck in a bit of immaturity is, are those actual needs? Are those actual needs that you have, first of all? And the second thing is is it a need that you can actually meet yourself? And when I say stuck in immaturity, sometimes we are still wanting our parents to meet those needs, but we're adults and we can actually meet those needs. So an example of that would be if I have a need for things to be secure and safe, can I actually meet that need for myself and for my family? Right. So that's a quick counseling session. Any questions about that? Thoughts? And then in counseling, I would have you guys write down, okay, so how can I meet this need, So, but I won't, you guys can think about that. And yeah, so in other words, what might you need to grow in, even if your parents or in-laws never change? And then identifying shared values. And, as you mentioned, when we understand stories, we can understand our shared values and things. My shared value with my dad when he said that, and I had this deeper understanding, is I want to be a good parent too. It look different, but we have that shared value of what it means of wanting to be a good parent. And that's probably why I could understand that deeply, with my dad. And then address your own internal conflicts as third culture. Is that better? Or did you turn it off? Or should I turn it off? Oh, it's on, I figured it out. Okay, so next slide. Boundaries now, and then we're gonna finish up. Okay, so boundaries, is this on? Boundaries are, what are boundaries? Boundaries are basically how we help maintain the way that we would like a relationship to look. Boundaries are your actions, how you want to be treated to protect your physical, emotional well-being. And echoing again, boundaries are to maintain a relationship, and they show that you don't want to cut off that relationship. What boundaries are not? Boundaries are not ways to control or manipulate someone else. Boundaries are not ultimatums. And boundaries are not expectations that others should change to fit your needs. So, a boundary, very practically, is not saying, you're not allowed to do that. It is, if you do this, then I will this, right? So, practical. It's not, don't yell at me, don't call me during work hours, Mom, stop commenting on my weight every time I see you. A boundary is something more like this. Mom, I love you, but I get scared when you yell. And because I love you and don't want to be scared by you, if you yell at me, I'm going to leave the room or hang up the phone. Or if you call me during work hours, I just want to let you know that I'm going to let it go to voicemail. I'll call you back after work hours. Or, Mom, if every time I see you, you're going to comment on my weight, I'm going to stop visiting for a while. So a boundary is an action that you take. It's not forcing someone to act or not act a certain way, because that is impossible. We cannot change other people. Some other practical things is a respectful tone, or if you can, a more lighthearted tone. Addressing their concerns using I statements. Know that it will not be magical and they're gonna respect your boundaries. Like the first time you bring it up, it will take consistency, and it's going to take you being okay with not feeling uncomfortable. So 2 things that I wrote down at the end were learn distress tolerance and emotional resiliency tools. And one thing that I tell I'm a LPC supervisor, which means I train our associates. So one thing I tell them all the time is that our job is not comfortable. We are constantly uncomfortable, but we learn how to be okay with being uncomfortable. So that is, kind of basically what it means to be emotional resilient. It is something that you have to practice and learn and do. You're not going to feel comfortable the first time. It's going to feel very awkward, and your parents might be upset with you. But as you're consistent, you're going to learn to build that resiliency. And Jesus set boundaries. Because every time, he was constantly be going out on his own in the dark, in solitude. Mark 1:35. Early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found Jesus, they said, "Everyone is looking for you." And Jesus replied, "Let's go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also." He actually went somewhere else. Jesus set boundaries. It's okay to set boundaries. And another very practical thing, as you think about, and I'm going to have you guys answer this, if you're willing to, is what are some boundaries that you might need to set? And so, Stanley and I have been married for 24 years. One of the boundaries that we learned was that our marriage came first, and our families of origin came second. So practically, Genesis 2:24 says, a man leaves his father and mother, holds fast to his wife, they become one flesh. Learn how to set boundaries together as a team if you're married, for your family. What is it? Set boundaries together as a team. Another thing that we set actually early on, and it was just something that we decided, but I think it was a good one, was that if something needed to be said to his family, he would do it. If something needed to be said to my family, I would do it. And for us, that worked really well. And a boundary that my mom set when we were first married, which I thought also is very wise, was she said, "Don't talk negatively about Stanley or his family to me. You will need to figure that on your own. You can talk to your friends but I don't want to think negatively of him or his family." So some very concrete, very tangible, practical kind of boundaries. Okay, so anyone want to share what boundaries you might have set, or maybe some boundaries that you feel like you need to set? Okay. Yes.
So when my wife and I, she's not feeling well tonight, but
Yeah.
when we were first married, my mother-in-law was a lot, and we had to set some really hard boundaries with her demeaning my wife, and um, I would get mad. I would, I would jump in, and she had some experience with men in the past too.
Mm,
So she would always take that as me threatening her,
yeah.
and I thought I was protecting my wife. And then eventually, when we had kids, we had to almost, in a sad way, like leverage. Like you're not gonna be able to see your grandbaby if you're going to continue to demean my wife in front of her kids.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So it's really hard. So I've had to reset those boundaries over the course of different years
Mm,
with different people. But yeah, my wife didn't know how to defend herself, and I
right.
was over the top, and so it was a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I think I'm so thankful that you shared, because that's such an example of how it's not comfortable, but it's needed to protect your kids and your family. Yeah. Um, your emotional, physical well-being. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's like trying to establish those boundaries, but at the same time, I want to maintain connections with my parents. But it's like, okay, for me, I struggle with finding, okay, well, if I set my boundaries and my parents cross those boundaries a little more often than I'd like,
Hmm.
I don't want to completely cut them out, but at the same time, I'm still learning on how to either maintain those firm boundaries or keep them in part of my life as part of the filial piety.
Hmm. I think so many people struggle with that. Like, it's not an easy process, especially in our culture. How do we? Because sometimes in those instances, it's more of how do I protect myself, knowing that they might say things that are hurtful or critical, or all those things, and because I want to maintain that presence with them, how do I protect myself from not taking that personally? And I don't know if that's what you're talking about. That's just what came up for me. That yeah, kind of that both end also. Yes.
I think it's important, like my wife came from a fairly dysfunctional family. She would say that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say mine was more functional. It's just dysfunctional as anybody else's, but I would say more functional. And we had to come to a point in understanding that I couldn't solve her problems with our family. She had to do that on her own. So instead of
Yeah.
us going to marriage counseling to solve some things first, she had to solve some things about her own family.
Right.
So it's really, like Josh was saying, it's really disconcerting when your spouse's parents are disrespectful, but to a certain extent, you have to let them, you can support them,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't make the decision on their behalf.
Right. Right. Yeah, that is such a great point too, and thank you for that, because it also is a segue to like Watershed Initiative, where we partnered with Loft City Church, where there are some things that need to be worked through in counseling. That, yeah, as much as we want to protect our spouse, that maybe they need to do some healing work, with the therapist. And also, kind of to add to that, and I don't know if this happened in your marriage, but I know something that occurs in lots of marriages, including mine and Stanley's, is that sometimes it comes out sideways within our own dynamics, right? That kind of like your mother-in-law, that she read yours as being threatened because of her own trauma, that we will read things because of, that might not be what our spouse is intending because of us stuff from the past. So it's always good to process through and heal. Yeah. That is very true.
How do you help create boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and do the support at the same time without, hey, this is your thing, you figure it out?
Yeah. Um, no, I mean, I think in terms of, yeah, that's a really good question because, I mean, practically speaking, I don't know if there's a soft sell at all. Like, if there's a possible soft sell to, I think it'd be good for us to go to counseling. But I think what you said is actually probably good. Like, maybe saying, I think it would be good for us to go to counseling. Or if you're in counseling, a lot of times I do this a lot, let's bring your spouse in. We call it a collateral participant. So where someone comes into counseling to support the other person. So really it's about the other person, like helping the person in counseling, but the other person is there as support, kind of to maybe add some insight and things. But sometimes that might be helpful just for them to see that it's not scary, that really it's like a safe, I'm not scary, I'm really nice, I'm here to help you. But do you have an answer to that? Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot, like a soft sell.
No, I think that's actually a good idea. Just because even though my wife's a counselor, I was terrified to go to counseling. It was just I remember like just going in and I was like just literally like shaking waiting to go in, even though I knew that counselors were nice and loving and all that. But I think once I was in there, it was like, oh, this is a good space. So yeah, any way to kind of get them in as a part of it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you tell someone to go to counseling, probably not going to get it.
I will say I'm very thankful for Pastor Sam and Loft City Church and other churches like it who are very pro counseling, because I know like a lot of our church partnerships, they will talk about it on the pulpit, right, or up here on the stage, and that is very much a soft sell. Like when a pastor says, I've gone to counseling, this is the work I've done. It's like, oh, yeah. So, good question. Yeah.
I would say as a parent, if you're gonna expect your kids to seek help, you gotta demonstrate that, whatever form that takes.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a good point. Yeah. I mean, when we see teens, I see lots of teens, I always want to bring the family in at some point. What I always tell the teens is, I'm here to help you get every single teenager I see. When I ask them how would you want your relationship with your parents to change, all of them say, I want it to be closer. Even if the parents don't even see that, they say, I want it to be closer. I want them to just be able to understand me, just to be able to sit. Like, I might not do everything perfectly, but I just want that closeness, not always lecturing me and things like that. So, yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Even my second gen kids that are like, with first gen parents. Any other questions? I love this time where you guys are asking questions and anyone can answer. Any other questions or thoughts? Yeah. Yeah.
I think for myself, I struggle with guilt in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Try to put a boundary.
Yeah.
I feel like my own parents, to them, I feel like I'm hurting them, and like I hurt their feelings, or sometimes they just don't. Like for me to enforce a boundary, I think they just don't understand that. Like, hey, you're hurting me, or you're hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
And so I get in this like cycle of guilt, which I still have residual guilt even to this day.
Mm.
Like how do you navigate?
The feeling of, yeah, the feeling
I
of,
don't know if it ever goes away. How your own words, but yeah, because then you also feel like they're getting older, so I feel like I'm not near them at the moment, so I both don't see here
mm-hmm.
because they're on the East Coast. So yeah.
My answer is not going to be one that is. I think that it's kind of like building that resiliency with the feeling of guilt or uncomfortableness or things that it might not ever go away. I think there are some things that we can do to understand, like self-compassion, understand why I'm making this decision, why I need to set this boundary with my parents. But I don't know if we can ever expect that guilt to completely go away. So my answer is not necessarily like a happy one, but it's more of like that guilt doesn't necessarily mean that what you're doing is wrong. So I think that might be something to the both and, to hold on to. That guilt might be a reflexive emotion, and we think that it's because I'm doing something wrong, but it might not be because you're doing something wrong, right? Yeah. Also, we live in a shame culture, so guilt is a feeling that we kind of go to automatically. So that's something also to recognize that in our minds, we feel guilty because what we have been taught is that we always need to do what our parents want us to do. And so if we're not doing what our parents want us to do, then we're wrong. That's my core narrative. Stanley knows my core narrative is I'm always wrong. That's my core pain, is I'm always wrong, and that's where my mind goes to reflex, automatically. But just because I feel that guilt doesn't mean that I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. I wish I could heal that, but yeah. 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 No, yeah, I know. Yeah, no, that's just a great question, and I think I feel it deeply, so I'm like, I wish I could heal it for both of us. Yeah. Any other questions or comments, thoughts? So I wanted to end with a kind of a fun story, again, with my parents. I kind of share that my relationship with my parents actually has changed a lot. And a lot of that happened when I think my parents became grandparents. And I remember when my son was maybe about 4 or 5 years old, and he got really frustrated playing a game. And my dad said to him, he said, "Evan, it's okay to be frustrated. We all get frustrated sometimes, especially when, what we want to do doesn't happen and doesn't happen the way we want. It's okay to be frustrated. Gong Gong, he's Gong Gong. Gong Gong, Gong Gong understands." And I was like, what in the world? You never said that to me. Like, if I was upset, I had to go in my closet and be upset. Like, what in the world is this? And my dad said, "I've been reading this book called Boundaries in Chinese at church." This church Bible study was going through boundaries. So, there's so much that the church can do, and just helping and leading. So, yeah, I was very thankful. Yeah, very different. My mom said sorry to me, for the first time. That was so significant. So things can change, and sometimes our parents will take the lead. Sometimes we need to take the lead, but things can change. I want to close with a reminder that navigating family dynamics, our relationship with our in-laws, and caregiving are opportunities to live out our faith. By extending grace and patience and unconditional love to our parents and our in-laws, but also setting boundaries and knowing when things are toxic and when I need to maybe cut things off sometimes. But it doesn't mean I don't love my parents. It doesn't mean that I don't extend them that patience and that grace. It just means that for the good of everyone, so I don't hate them forever, that I, set that boundary. Let me say a quick prayer for us in closing. If you have any questions for me, please do come up and you don't even have questions. If you just want to talk, you can also come up and talk to me. But let's end with a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for these brothers and sisters here tonight. I thank you for this time that we had together.
I thank you for our families, even though, sometimes they cause us a lot of pain. I thank you for their stories that connects with ours. I pray that you would give us the strength and the wisdom to be able to navigate our family dynamics in a way that honor you. And if it's your will, to bring healing and love to future generations. Sometimes, Lord, we know it's not necessarily just about us, but about our kids as well. Pray all this in your son's name. Amen.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Hey, really quick, there are watershed cards if you are interested in getting counseling. There's information about that. If you are interested and you let them know that you're part of Loft, I think there's some kind of discount for the first several sessions. So just be mindful of that. And then Jenny's card is up here as well. We will have 4 more of these next year. We're working on details with Watershed to get some more of these courses down. But any feedback you guys have, any recommended topics that you guys would love to cover that we could go back to Watershed and say, hey, these are some of the things that we would love to hear and process and learn together, please let me know as we figure out next year's calendar. Would love to have those topics in front of them as well. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you guys for spending your Friday night with us as well. So God bless you guys. We'll see you Sunday.